Hello everyone, this is Samuel Chang here for Joiner English, and today we are going to be exploring Unit 5, Section 5.2, Analysis of Argumentative Essays. So we're going to have a couple of examples of good argumentative essays and effective arguments that we're going to look at, as well as looking through why they're effective and what elements make them effective. So let's go ahead and get started. So today I'm going to be working on this kind of split screen here. So we have an organizer on the left side we're going to be filling out, and I will post this on the website. But I do encourage you to take notes over what you think is good from what I say, not just what I type on the organizer. Now we're going to be using typing instead of writing today because I feel like I type a bit faster and it might make the time go a bit faster as well. So on the right side, we have our texts over here. So we have text 1 that we're going to do first, and then we have text 2. And you see my little highlighter. That's my mouse right here. And yeah, that'll be what we'll annotate first before we get started with filling out the organizer. So our first text today is, should we stop serving flavored milk? So the prompt here, the prompt's very important because the prompt really tells us what the argumentative essay is going to be focusing on and what, is kind of our evidence. So the prompt says, read the article and then write an essay in which you argue for or against serving flavored milk in school cafeterias. Use text evidence from the article to support your claim. And both of these are based off of, because these are student-written essays that are very good. They might get a perfect score on like a K-Prep assessment. But they do have evidence that they're based off of, like they're given certain amounts of articles, stuff like that. We're not going to focus so much about the articles because, frankly, we don't have them, but also they should summarize the article enough so that you can read the argumentative essay and understand the evidence without reading the articles themselves. So, and that's something you should do in your argumentative essay as well. Summarize the sections you're going to use as evidence enough so that the reader does not have to go back and read the article you're quoting from. And that's a good thing to do. And it says, use text evidence from the article. So they will have quotations and they will have paraphrases. So let's go ahead and get started with text 1 and annotate it kind of, and I'll talk my way through it. So, and I'll read through the whole thing as well. Do you prefer chocolate or strawberry milk to regular milk? If so, you need to be aware that some educators and health experts want to stop school cafeterias from providing chocolate or other flavored milk to students. So, and we're going to fill this out periodically as we go through this, but right here we have a question, right? And what does this question serve as? Well, remember in Unit 1, I talked about what we called an AGD, or an attention getter, you might call it. And this is what they're looking for right here. So a hook, right? You might call it a hook. So let's type down how our authors hook the audience. Well, they, number 1, they ask a question, right? And the question, ask a question to kind of interest the readers, right? And to involve the readers. I think that would be a better word to use here. And this question does a good job of involving the readers. Why? Well, because it's something that the readers really care about, right? If we prefer chocolate or strawberry milk to regular milk, we're going to read the question and be like, interesting. But then after they do that, what do they do next? Well, this part right here is the kind of urgency getter. Like, it tells us of urgency. It encourages urgency, right? Because it's saying, well, educators and health experts want to stop school cafeterias from providing this milk, right? And then it tells us to do something, right? And gives us evidence, right? Because that's what the point of this article is about, right? I'm just going to put gives evidence. So this is how the authors hook the audience, right? They ask the question to get our attention. They encourage the urgency with this next sentence right here, and they also give us a little bit of evidence here. The article "Chocolate Milk in School Cafeterias" explains that this group of people are concerned that the extra sugar added to chocolate milk or other flavored milk is unhealthy. So what is that? Well, that's a sort of counter argument, right? So and saying, well, these people are saying that it's unhealthy, but I'm saying that this is my, and then the next sentence is their thesis, right? Then they're saying, while excess sugar is certainly unhealthy, I think it would be unwise to take chocolate milk out of cafeterias. The result of taking chocolate or other flavored milk out of the cafeterias would be worse than the little bit of extra sugar kids consume. So we kind of see a two-sentence thesis here, right? So this first sentence of the thesis, while excess sugar is certainly unhealthy, I think it would be unwise to take chocolate milk out of cafeterias. That's the first sentence. But then the thesis sort of goes on, right? The result of taking chocolate or other flavored milk out of cafeterias would be worse than a bit of extra sugar kids consume. So that kind of goes on. That's another little part of the thesis, right? Because that still goes on explaining the author's viewpoint. And I'm going to roughly write thesis here. So having a two-sentence thesis is okay as long as you make it clear that both the sentences are the theses. And it's pretty clear here, in my opinion. So we have that, right? We have our hook. Do we state the main argument? Well, yes, in our thesis, right? We're stating the main argument in our thesis. And the thesis says, let me go ahead and get this backward so you all can see. Okay, so the thesis says, well, excess sugar is certainly unhealthy. I think it would be unwise to take chocolate milk out of cafeterias, right? So I'm going to put cites evidence here. And thesis tells us the author's main viewpoint and argument. It also, it provides actually before I put thesis, I'm going to put a counter argument, right? Because we just went over the counter argument. So the counter argument right here, remember, it acknowledges the other side, right? So we have both a thesis and a counter-argument. So that's really a good thing, right? Because the thesis and the counter-argument kind of act so that the reader at first glance knows that the writer knows both sides. So at first glance, the reader is like, well, okay, we have a thesis, we have a counter-argument. So that means the writer of this text knows both sides. So then we have this kind of untraditional, it's not 5 paragraphs, it's there's an introduction, and then there's kind of 2 body paragraphs, and then a kind of conclusion. And remember when I said that was okay, right? It could be 4 or 5 paragraphs, and this is a 4-paragraph essay. The next one we're going to see is many more paragraphs, but they have more points, so that's okay as well. So let's go ahead and get started with our first body paragraph here. Kids who buy the lunches in the cafeteria have very few choices. So right off the bat, our writer gives us the topic sentence. And I'm going to write topic 1 here. And this is the topic sentence because this is the claim that the author makes throughout the first, right here, the first paragraph, or the first body paragraph. So, kids who buy the lunches in the cafeteria have very few choices. Good. Okay, in my elementary school, there might be a choice between 2 main dishes, 2 vegetables, and 2 kinds of milk. There's our first piece of evidence. That makes for a very limited lunch. In middle school, we have more choices, but they include potato chips, cookies, donuts, and other snack foods. In fact, I know plenty of kids who buy nothing but junk food for lunch, but even kids who are trying to eat a well-balanced diet still have just a few choices. Now, this doesn't seem like hard facts. No, that's not hard evidence, but it's kind of the author trying to relate with the audience, right? Because a bunch of facts poured out sometimes isn't even as good as the author relating and, kind of getting closer to the audience, right? Because that's what the audience cares about. So it seems to me that choosing milk, any kind of milk, is better than choosing soda or other sugary drinks. Kids who bring their lunches often need to buy a beverage to go with it. These kids could choose to bring a sugary drink instead of buying milk. Giving them a variety of great-tasting milk seems like a smart way to get them to make a healthy choice. Now that's good, right? So how does the author provide good evidence? Well, first of all, the author provides, real life anecdotes, right? And that's a sort of evidence, right? And it's kind of a good sort of evidence that relates the author's life and the author's arguments to the reader or the audience's life. So that's a real life anecdote. And let's list other types of evidence we see. Well, we see in my elementary school, there might be a choice between 2 main dishes, 2 vegetables, and 2 kinds of milk. So personal experience. We have that as evidence, but we don't see any numbers yet. So let's keep going. And make sure you're paying attention to the detailed things that the author's doing here that we didn't necessarily cover in section 5.1. Like the stuff like, relating with my audience, the stuff like using personal experience as evidence. This is the kind of stuff you could only get from reading a good argumentative essay. You can't really get this from direct instruction, or direct lecture, so to speak. So that's why we're doing this. Let's go to the next body paragraph 2. It is true that the sugar kids eat is a big concern. According to the American Health Association, more than 2/3 of American children are overweight to the point of obesity. There's a counter-argument. There's our main counter-argument, right? So this counter-argument has data, right? I'm trying my best to write neatly here. Okay, this counter-argument has data. While counter-arguments don't necessarily have to have data all the time, sometimes it's even good to show that you've researched the other side, right? Because if you've researched the other side as well as your own side, and you know both sides really, really well, that means that you've made a decision knowingly, right? You can convince the reader that you know both sides very well. So that's why they include evidence here. So now we have numbers. We have, data and statistics, right? So we have this, more than 2/3 of American children are overweight. Okay, there's a statistic. Sugar is one of the causes. Well, that's a pretty obvious assertion there. Strawberry flavored milk has 27 grams of sugar, and that is about the same as a Coke. People are fighting to pull chocolate milk out of cafeterias. Think that means drinking flavored milk is just like drinking a soft drink or eating candy. But they're saying, here's the rebuttal, that's not right. I'm going to put a R here so that you can see, but that is not right? That's the rebuttal. Milk, whether white, chocolate, or strawberry, contains calcium, vitamin D, and protein, which are all necessary for growing kids. In addition, milk has many other vitamins and minerals that kids need. And in fact, only 5% of the total added sugar in kids' diets is from flavored milk. There's another statistic, right? I'm going to highlight all these statistics here, right? Only 5% of the total added sugar is from flavored milk. Not only that, but one study showed that drinking flavored milk did not make kids any more overweight than other kids. On the other hand, soft drinks are artificial and offer nothing nutritional, and candy is almost all sugar. Even so, no one would agree that strawberry milk is the same as a lollipop, right? So they are relating, again, their experience and their opinion with your life and your opinion, right? And they also provide hard evidence in this one, right? They provide, the data and the statistics, and then they provide, scientific facts, right? So they provide scientific facts here, right? I'm going to combine 2 of these because I'm trying to fit this in one page, but, right? So we have scientific facts there. And these scientific facts are saying, well, milk contains calcium, vitamin D, and protein, which are good for kids, right? So we have a lot of different types of evidence here, which is really good. Let's move on to our conclusion paragraph here. Oh, and we should go ahead and fill out the counter-argument or rebuttal. How does the author effectively make a counter-argument or rebuttal? Well, you should find it pretty obvious, right? They relate to, the lives of the audience, right? And then they also say, well, they give concrete evidence for the other side, right? For the counter side. But then they do what? Well, then they, they kind of prove that this evidence, while it's true, is not relevant. Right? So that's really interesting. That's one way to do it, right? And then third, they, with the rebuttal, of course, they give counter evidence. They give They give more evidence. They give rebuttal evidence. I'm going to put that. Okay. So that's ways to make a good counter-argument and a rebuttal. Okay? Let's look at our conclusion. Well, let's go ahead and do our conclusion. Then we'll fill out these next two. Okay? So, even though nutritionists and other experts don't agree on the issue, it seems clear that it is better for kids to drink milk of any kind rather than to not drink milk at all. Excuse me. Taking flavored milk out of the cafeteria almost guarantees that there will be many students who go through each day with no milk at all. Many parents claim that their kids will not drink white milk, even if it is the only kind offered. Their kids would rather go without, and going without milk means going without the wonderful benefits of milk. So we have another piece of evidence here. Even though it's not statistical evidence, it is, it's inferring that they've surveyed parents, right? Because many parents claim, that means, they've gotten the opinions of parents. So, that's a bit of evidence there. You've been told not to put evidence in the conclusion, but sometimes just, something simple for audience to think about will make your paper more persuasive. Their kids would rather go without, and going without milk means going without the wonderful benefits of milk. I know many kids who hate white milk, but like chocolate or strawberry milk very much. Even with the sugar concerns, it is better to have some of the benefits of milk rather than none. Even experts from both the American Heart Association and the American Academy of Pediatrics also think it's better for kids to drink flavored milk than no milk at all. So look, another piece of evidence from a credible source, right? So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this. This is a credible source. And notice that they didn't completely rebut, the counter-argument, right? They're conceding that, yes, white milk, it's pretty clear that they're inferring, like they're conceding that white milk, yes, it's better than chocolate and strawberry milk for you. Like, it's a better thing for you to take in. I think most people know that. And they're conceding that, but they're saying, well, this milk is better than no milk at all. So they're kind of changing their argument a little bit to match, the evidence from the other side. So then they talk about the American Heart Association, American Academy of Pediatrics. And then it says they agree that the benefits of flavored milk outweigh its disadvantages. I think school officials need to listen to the experts, the parents, and the students, and continue to serve milk in school cafeterias. The benefits of drinking milk clearly outweigh the drawbacks. Keep the milk in the schools so that students will be able to make choices and still get the calcium and vitamins they need. Interesting. So how do they use clear organization of ideas? Well, first of all, it's pretty clear that the author of this is, they're listing their argument clearly, right? They have points, going through each of these. They have, topic 1, topic 2, and then they have, a conclusion that introduces a little bit of new stuff, but, wraps up the argument. So they list their argument clearly along with each body point, right? And what else do they do? Well, get rid of these periods. I'm sorry. I want to be consistent. Okay. So listing their argument clearly along with each body point. What else do they do? Well, they, give an effective counter argument with not only with a rebuttal and a concession, right? So that shows that they're not completely against the other side, right? And then what do they do finally? Well, they give something to think about, right? At the end. So this is a very clear organization of ideas. You can see that they're listing out the ideas and they know what they're talking about. And then finally down here, let me scoot this up a bit. Okay, so finally down here we have wrapping up the argument. So we just read the conclusion, and they effectively wrap up the argument because they do introduce a little bit of new stuff, stuff to chew on. They introduce a little bit of evidence, but not too much, right? And then what do they do? Finally, well, they tell readers to agree with their claim, right? Or they, not tell, but, they try to find the word. They encourage readers Sorry, I'm going to the next page again, but scoot this up a little bit so you can keep seeing. Yeah, so they encourage readers to agree with their claim, right? And why do they encourage readers to agree with their claim? Well, or rather not why, but how do they encourage? Well, of course they are, they're telling readers like, well, I think school officials need to listen to the experts, the parents, and the students. So that's literally everyone that's opinion matters in this case, right? And they already proved that the experts recommend chocolate and strawberry milk over no milk. They've told the parents and the students do as well. So it's saying everyone agrees on this, right? And then they kind of, solidify their point. They're like, the benefits of drinking milk clearly outweigh the drawbacks. And then they end with one sentence that kind of entreats, the school officials to listen to them. Keep the milks in the school so that students will be able to make choices and still get the calcium and vitamins they need. So that's super important. Like, they wrap up the whole paper with, an emphasis on please do this. So this is kind of, a direct argument and a direct persuasive essay, right? You're trying to persuade a direct audience to do something, right? So they encourage and, remind readers to agree with their claim, because right here they're reminding the readers, right? So they're doing a really good job of all of this. But let's look at text number 2, right? Does it do it as well, or does it not do it as well? Because this is a new style of text. Look, there's so many paragraphs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 paragraphs. It's obviously not a 5-paragraph essay, right? So does this, do a better job, or does this do a worse job? So that's why we're exploring more text, because exploring more text really allows us the chance to find what's a better way or a worse way to write our own argumentative essays. So text number 2 says, should we increase taxes to improve ABC High School? That's the title. Remember, titles are important because that really tells, the reader what the whole argument is about. Now let's look at our prompt. ABC School District has proposed raising taxes in your town. They have created a plan to use the money from the tax raise to provide ABC High School with new facilities and do much needed repairs on the school. Read the documents provided and write an article expressing whether you do or do not think that the proposed tax raise should be passed. Excuse me again. So, the articles again. Let's go ahead and ignore the existence of the articles, because in the argumentative essay, they're going to summarize the articles enough so that we don't need to read them ourselves. So we have right here a proposed tax raise that we're writing for or against. We don't know until we read the first paragraph. And we have, you'll see, I've already read this, but you'll see as we read this through, there is a whole lot of evidence that they give. That you're like, well, where did that come from? Well, it came from, the articles that we just ignored, right? Because they do give a pretty good summary of those in this text. So let's go ahead and move forward with this. And I think section 5.3 will be more about how to find this evidence in a text, whereas this section is more about, examples of a good text, right? And why they're good. So our hook. The ABC School District Board has recently proposed a tax to add new facilities as well as conduct some major repairs to ABC High School. Is this a very good hook? In my opinion, not really. But then that's my opinion because I don't live in the town and I don't go to ABC High School. And this might be a good hook for people who live in the town or have children going to ABC High School, right? Because they're like, oh, this is relevant to me. I will benefit from this, right? So that's good. Or they don't like it and they're like, oh, there's a tax. I don't want to pay any more tax, right? So this is a good attention getter for both sides, for people who live in the town, right? So sometimes your attention getter might not be interesting to, people other than the people that your audience is, right? If people are reading it that are not your audience, it might not be as important or interesting. So the next sentence says, the tax revenue plan includes building a new gymnasium, a new science room and lab, a new media center and library, new Chapter 1 and special education classrooms, and other facilities such as more parking space, an increase in storage area, and new locker rooms. Along with new construction, the board is proposing to remodel facilities such as the drama music areas, the entire roof, the heating system, the school kitchen, and present gym as well. this tax allowing ABC High School to add more facilities should be passed in order for young students to be provided with a better education. So let's look at this final sentence right here. This sentence is our thesis. It doesn't have 3 points, but remember we have 7 paragraphs, so the points are going to be introduced in later paragraphs. So this is our thesis right here. That H is bad, but you get the idea, sorry. And this is our thesis right here. And what's in the middle right here? Well, a whole lot, of details. Well, what's this tax revenue plan going to do? What new facilities are going to be built? What auxiliary or like what non-classroom facilities are going to be built, like the drama music areas, roof, heating system. So they kind of divide these into 2 sections. So how do we hook the audience? Well, in this case, the hook of the audience is, the importance of this to ABC residents, right? Not important to us, as non-ABC residents, but, it's really important to ABC residents, or especially ABC students, right? And then what does it also do? It lists details. It addresses the audience by listing details, and it's kind of like, I can't help but think the first paragraph is kind of like a news report. It kind of gives a summary, right? A summary of what's happening. So, and sometimes a summary draws readers in, because if you don't know what's happening and you're like, oh, I'm going to read this and then I'll know what's happening, right? And then you read on and you're like, well, here's an argument. Let's keep reading, right? Sometimes giving a brief summary is a good way to hook the audience as well. So let's look at, our main argument here. And we have our main argument already. And our main argument right here is this tax allowing ABC High School to add more facilities should be passed, in order for young students to be provided with a better education. So it states the writer's viewpoint. What else? It definitely restates the prompt, right? I'm going to go ahead and put that up here. It definitely restates the prompt. And third, it gives a appropriate reason to make the readers, to make the readers read on, right? And this reason is young students to be provided with a better education, right? An appropriate and important, right? And they know that it's important for all parents and students, right? And of course also school board members, because young students are, the central element of, their audience, right? They're the most important audience, right? So yeah, that's a good, thesis right there. Let's look at our first body paragraph, and there's going to be, 5 body paragraphs and then a conclusion. And that's kind of weird, because sometimes, like the last one, we had 2 body paragraphs, and then most of the times we have 3, right? But this one has 5 body paragraphs. I think a lot of times schools nowadays teaching these essays are encouraging students not to use the 5-paragraph essay kind of model, because it gets kind of old at times to keep reading, point 1, point 2, point 3, and then we're going to move on to the next, the conclusion. And it's like, it's kind of boring, but this one is a good example of how you can effectively write an argument without using the 5-paragraph or 4-paragraph kind of model. Well, several arguments have been brought up concerning the tax since it failed in the March election. Oh, there's one piece of information for us. Some say the school doesn't need to have brand new facilities and better classrooms, but it does. There is a counter argument, right? Oh, I'm sorry, that was horrible. Let me underline that again. It's kind of hard to do stuff with a mouse. Okay, this is the counter argument. And put CA right there for counter argument. And then it says, but it does, right? That's the, the short summary of the rebuttal. And then it gives a lot of rebuttal evidence, right? This is all the rebuttal. I'm going to put R right here with evidence, right? So it gives a whole paragraph of a counter argument and rebuttal. And, like I said in 5.1, you have the choice. You can do a whole paragraph of a counter argument and rebuttal, or you can, incorporate it into one of your body paragraphs. But they're right here, they're doing a whole paragraph of counter argument. So right here, make a counter-argument and rebuttal. Well, we can say that counter-argument is stated clearly, right, and has its own paragraph, right? Rebuttal is supported with many pieces of anecdotal evidence. And this is anecdotal evidence because, these aren't, data and statistics, but they are, really important stories, right? The roof had a leaking problem, and the tiles were rotting, and, the heating system had to shut the school down for a few days. Stuff like that, that's good evidence, right? So it's supported with many pieces of evidence, which is good. So what sorts of evidence? Well, let's go ahead and read through this. Just this year, the school had to shut down as a result of the malfunction of the heating system. Roof of the library also had a leaking problem all winter long. The leaking has actually caused the ceiling tiles to rot to the point where they are having to be removed. It isn't safe to sit underneath them because, in fact, they fall into tables where students had only been working minutes before. That's very convincing. And it really effectively takes down the credibility of this counter-argument because it's saying, well, does it not need brand new facilities and better classrooms? Well, look at what's happening. They're like, well, this is horrible. Everyone would agree this is horrible, and it's happening. So why are you still saying it doesn't need new facilities, right? That's the logic of this little paragraph right here. And that's our counter-argument and rebuttal. It's very well done. And then here comes another one. And this is a body paragraph. And we're going to look at how the author provides evidence, right? Because the author does provide quite good evidence throughout this essay. So another issue people may be concerned with is the money that taxpayers have to put up for the building. The cost of the project in its entirety will be $2.9 million, meaning that for the next 25 years, taxpayers would pay 40 cents more per $1,000 in property tax than they do this year. So let's look at this one more time. This is another counter-argument, is it not? This is kind of an untraditional type of essay, right? This is another counter-argument that they're rebutting again. So they're kind of using multiple counter-arguments as their points. They're actually using counter-arguments as their points. So there is another counter-argument. And if you see a topic that yields itself to more of a style of rebutting counter-arguments and a lot of counter-arguments than it does with actually supporting the claim with more claim, or supporting the thesis with more claims, you can use a lot of counter-arguments. You can literally use counter-arguments and rebuttals in place of points at times. But I think you're encouraged to use points because that takes more of a positive standpoint than a negative one. Yeah. So let's keep going here. The cost of the project will be $2.9 million, meaning that for the next 25 years, taxpayers would pay 40 cents more per $1,000. And while they're not explicitly saying this is kind of inferring, are you not even willing to pay 40 cents more per $1,000 for the good of students? That's asking them, it's so cheap for each and every person. Are you not willing to do that? And I mean, it is pretty cheap, right? And that makes you, they don't have to explicitly state it because it's a pretty obvious thing that they're trying to, prove that it's pretty cheap. The project does cost a significant amount of money, but the school needs it. If something isn't done now, then the facilities, such as the library, the science room, and others, will continue to grow steadily worse. Construction and remodeling needs to be done eventually, so why not now, when interest rates are low and expenses are also low? Excuse me. Superintendent Smith commented that it would cost the taxpayers much less money now than 10 years from now. Another reason that this is a good time to pass this tax is that the results of ballot measure 5 are going into effect same time as the tax. As it stands now, property tax rates will go down another $2.50 by next year. However, if taxpayers don't mind paying what they do now and can handle a 40-cent increase, then the school can be that much better. You can see a whole lot of data and statistics here. What's our data here? Here's the total amount, how much per person. Ballot measure 5 will make it go down, and then you see this 40-cent increase again. There's a lot of data and stats here. So we're going to put that as the first thing right there. So we have data and statistics there. Sorry, my mouse went kind of crazy there. But So that's a lot of data, and that convinces people, well, 40 cents per $1,000, that's okay, right? If I make $60,000, then I only have to pay what $24 extra tax in the whole year, and $24 isn't all that much for any person, right? So they're like, oh, okay, that's good. And then readers just read on, and they're like, oh, well, my tax rates are going down next year. Oh, if they're going down and I just need to increase it by just that little bit, it's okay, it's a good investment, right? And then it says the school can be that much better, so it's making people feel like, okay, yeah, it's going to make the school better, and I'm getting a raise anyway, why not give some, or a tax decrease anyway, why not give some of that, tax money to the school? Yeah. So they're kind of relating with the taxpayer there. It's good to relate with your audience, because that helps. So let's read the next body paragraph and see what other types of evidence we have. Many other good reasons we exist. Okay, let me, I think probably they did this we wrong. Let me take that out. Okay. Many other good reasons exist for funding this construction now. For one, better facilities will be made available to everyone. Staff members, students, and community members. The new gym will allow students athletes. With only one gym, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but let's go to the evidence here. With only one gym, the junior high, has to practice in the morning before school at 6:30, meaning that the girls and boys team had to practice at the same time with half the court split, After school, the high school girls would practice from 3:30 to 5:30. Varsity boys would start at 5:30 to 6 and go until 7:30. After that, the junior varsity boys would come in for an hour and a half. It's absurd to think that student athletes can make good use of their time with a schedule like that. If the tax were to pass, both the new gym and the present gym would be used for practices, and athletes wouldn't have to wait so long to practice every day. So definitely personal anecdotes and experience, right? Because who knows, this person might be an athlete, or this person might know friends that are athletes, right? Well, that's definitely personal anecdotes, right? That's not statistical and numerical evidence, but that's a really, it does a good job of making the audience feel the pain of these people, right? It makes them feel like I have an obligation to help these people. Let's go to the next paragraph here. Another reason that the gym should be built is that it is no longer adequate. The bleachers are too close to the court, and there's no room to walk by without getting in the way during a game. Gym also poses a problem for cheerleaders. As it is now, there's no room for them to cheer. They have to stand on one of the ends, which of course is right in the way of people walking by. If a new gym were built, enough room would be provided surrounding the court so that there wouldn't be any of the problems there are now. Okay, now this is interesting. So this continues kind of the point of the gym, but it's no longer talking about athletes. It's talking about, games. It's talking about courts and cheerleaders, right? So another reason why we need a new gym, okay? And then what does it do next? Another advantage the tax proposed is to provide more space in the school. The school has always been small, which is in some ways nice. So it acknowledges that in some ways it's nice, like it might be a quaint, small space, but it needs to expand. And then they list reasons for that. The lack of space is a problem because everyone is crammed into one little hallway trying to make it around from class to class. As it is, there isn't enough room for the library to be a library, or the kitchen to just be a kitchen. Students can't even go to the library when they need to because health, media, and other classes are held there. The satellite learning classroom, which shares a space with the kitchen, usually has a difficult learning atmosphere each day, while people prepare food for the hot lunch program. Another problem area is the current science room and lab. Lab facilities are outdated and cannot be replaced for a variety of reasons related to plumbing and electrical systems. Both science teachers have publicly said that the chemical storage room is inadequate and unsafe. The science curriculum is a core part of students' education that deserve good facilities. Okay, so what other evidence? Well, teacher quotes, right? Or let me put professional quotes. That's a good piece of evidence, right? Both science teachers have said, and there's more quotes up here, right? The Superintendent Smith commented, stuff like that. And that's professional quotes are always a good way to increase your credibility. Now let's look at our conclusion here. But first, before we look at our conclusion, let's look at our clear organization of ideas. Does this author have a good, clear organization of ideas? Well, yes, they do, because they do a very good job, right, of separating the They do a good job of separating, each point into a paragraph. And we see the counter-argument rebuttal points. There's two of them, right? Separated from what? Separated from the, the main points, right? And, the evidence, each paragraph is point plus evidence, right? So they do organize their ideas very well. They don't, over exaggerate, or well, they don't, overly blend things together. They kind of split up, each paragraph as it should be split. Then let's read our conclusion and then answer our last question here, and we'll be done. So, it is clear then that ABC High School needs significant improvements, therefore the tax must be passed. As a community, education is an essential part of the future. In the past, our city has relied on the timber industry for employment, but times are changing, and the younger generations need to be better prepared to meet the challenges that arise. Ooh, I love this. It brings an almost irrelevant point in, and then it makes it like the most relevant thing, or in the most, thought-worthy thing that anybody could think about. Because a lot of times, if you put a bunch of facts there, the only people that are going to care are parents and students and teachers. But, the people who are making the decisions are not those people. The people who are making the decisions are people on the school board, right? But now they're relating this problem specifically to people outside the education system, people in government. And they know their audience, so they can do this very well. It says, in the past, our city has relied on the timber industry. You're like, whoa, why do I need to be talking about the timber industry here? But then it says times are changing and the younger generations need to be better prepared to meet the challenges. Meaning if you put this money in, then, they can meet, future challenges other than timber industry, right? This is super, super great. Why? Because it really relates in even, older people who don't really care about schooling. It relates those people in too, right? It really, whoever is on that board, whoever is listening, whoever is your audience, that engages them. Wrapping up the argument, great relation to the audience, right? Whether they be school leaders, school admin, or board members. For example, they need to be able to take part in a variety of activities and be able to achieve in many different areas. If the school is inadequate, how can the younger generations be provided with the education and training they need to be successful in the future? So this is kind of our sign-off, our question, right? Remember when I said it was good to sign off with a question? And especially a question as thought-worthy as this one, right? Because, everybody's worried about the next generation. You hear that with older people a lot, but this question really makes everyone think. Like, if the school doesn't have our money, how can our younger generations be provided with this education and training? So that's a really great way to end the essay. So ends with a thought-worthy question. It's a good way to end, right? And this essay is written very well, even though it's not in the traditional, 5-paragraph sense. It's written very well because it does a good job of relating to many people. It also does a good job of providing concrete, statistical and non-numerical evidence, right? And it also, ends with, stuff that doesn't relate exactly to the main point, not so detailed, but that brings in people around us, right? Brings in people other than, the main audience, and brings in, if the main audience is someone you don't expect, it brings those people in as well. So this is a really great essay, as is the first one. The first one's more traditional, but it's also a great essay. So I encourage you to make your essays more like this. And when you're assigned an essay, you can come back and read these texts. These texts are very, very effective for making us think about how to make our essays better, right? So I do hope that this helped, and this is the end of our lesson 5.2 for today. Again, I will post both the text, annotated text, and the organizer that we just wrote onto the website, so you can go on there to find extra information. Okay, again, I'm Samuel Chang for Joiner English, and I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Thank you very much.